I'm just asking in case just let me know if you have a seat.
Hello, everyone. Hello. My name is Mary Magsman. I am the Public Programs Manager here at the Menil, and I'm very happy to be welcoming you to tonight's program. We are going to be having Marc Bauer in conversation with Kelly Montana. I want to give a special thank you to all the supporters. The wall drawing is generously supported by the John R. Eckel Jr. Foundation, Cindy and David Finch, Caroline Huber, Dylan Kyle and Sam Lassiter, Scott and Judy Nyquist, Leslie and Shannon Sasser, and Elizabeth and Barry Young, and UBS Private Wealth. The Artist Talk series is generously supported by the Cockrell Cockrell Family Fund. We invite all of you to stay afterwards for a reception as well. And I want to tell you about a few of our exciting things coming up here at the Menil. Next Friday, September 29th, the Crissa in New York exhibition opens to the public. The second open studio program with Nestor Topchi is on Saturday, October 7th. And our next artist talk is on Thursday, October 12th, with Nestor Topchi in conversation with Timothy Morton. So now I'm going to turn it over to Kelly and Marc. So thanks again.
Thank you, Mary. And I happily have the pleasure of introducing Marc Bauer to all of you. Marc's art has been featured in numerous exhibitions across Europe, for example, at the Drawing Room in London, the Pompidou in Paris, and the Migros Museum in Zurich. And his most recent wall drawing was on view in Kinshasa as part of the Congo Biennial last year. In 2020, he was the recipient of the Meret Oppenheim Prize. Meret Oppenheim may be familiar to some of you, which is Switzerland's most prestigious art award. Marc was born in Geneva and now lives and works in Zurich, where he is a lecturer at the Zurich University of the Arts. What brought Marc's work to us first was really just the incredible investment in drawing and how he uses the material possibilities of that medium, the kind of crumble of the charcoal, how easy it is to blur and erase images, to heighten his ideas about the fragility of memory, the mutability of image, and the joys and hazards of human relationships and human encounters. You're here. You're fascinated by the, and I love how fascinated you are by the overwhelm of the media landscape and how images circulate through society. So those of you that have spent a few moments already looking at this brand new work of art, you'll see images from things you may remember from art history textbooks, things that looked like images that accompanied headlines you read on your phone this morning, images that feel like photographs that maybe you yourself took last week. And I love how they swirl together to make these new narratives, these strange encounters, and it really sort of feels at times what it's like to be and move in the world, which is just terrifically exciting. This kind of prismatic view of history and culture and politics. For this talk today, what Marc and I are going to do, we're going to talk through 3 examples of his previous works, things that we feel like bring out themes that have recurred in his practice and may help us all access what's happening in this drawing, which is titled Resilience, Drawing the Line. And what makes a talk like this particularly exciting is that this work is 3 days old. So Marc and I are also we're still learning about this work. So I think a lot of what you'll hear tonight are going to be thoughts in progress, new observations, and really a little bit of us both kind of learning in public, learning in front of you what this work is really about. And we really invite that conversation and the reception afterwards to learn from you as well. And it's that kind of feedback and response that Marc really welcomes in his practice. He's someone that really works in conversation. And as a great example of that, the work that you're seeing tonight will be up for about 11 months, or up for about a year. But Marc's going to come back and see us twice over the next year. And during those visits, he'll make changes and alterations to the drawing. So additions, erasures, we don't know yet. You don't know yet.
Not really. Not really. I have a few ideas, but it's not precise.
And I just feel like all of that's very, very indicative of just your practice as a whole, this kind of generosity and this last 18 months of working with you from your first visit here in Houston, and just how transparent you were in your process, how open you were to sharing kind of the messiness of thoughts and ideas and kind of the vulnerability of all of that. And I think that's really representative of how interested you are in hearing from others and kind of learning about this work as it unfolds for us in the next year. So thank you, Marc. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Kelly. And it was a pleasure also to as Kelly say, I'm someone who need outside output to create something and conversation. And it was a very nice process to work with you, so thank you. I also take the opportunity to quickly thank many people. I will go a bit fast. The staff of the Menil, Dominic Clay, Patrick Yarrington, Kent Dorn, and Alex Rosas, Jane Brandt, and A.B. Schleicher. Maybe I pronounce with the German way, I'm sorry. As well as Edward Kopp, Rebecca Rabino, Mary McSalmon, and Tony Martinez. I would like also to thank the people that we interview and that we had feedback from, so the community members. And it's Nick Vaughan and Jake Margolin, G.D. Doyle, Roberto Terrada, Harrison Guy, Kuma, and Kristen Schlemmer. I hope I forget no one.
Fantastic. So we'll go ahead and get started with an early work of yours, one from almost 20 years ago now. And so I'd be really interested in us starting tonight, Marc, with you just sharing with us a little bit about this work and the themes in it.
Yeah, this work, so from 2005, is one of the first work I did. And it's, well, maybe you can already see that there is, it's not so far from, for example, the set of drawing you see on the top of the wall drawing. And in this work, I was, the departure point, let's say, was the family album of my grandfather, the maternal grandfather. When he died, I asked for the photo albums, and there was with this grandfather kind of family crisis trauma, because when my sister converted to Judaism, he suddenly refused to see her, and with kind of anti-Semitic remarks. We had no idea that he was anti-Semitic. We thought he was senile. Speaking with the doctor, it's it doesn't work really like that. So we didn't see him for the last part of his life, maybe 3 or 4 years. And it's only when I had access to these photo albums and looking through it that I saw that when he was young, he also participated in some meeting in the fascism, with the political party, fascism in Italy, so it was in the 20s. But actually he was already living in Switzerland, and it was since Italian community was already a big community in Geneva, they invited some fascist leader to present the idea and to have support from the diaspora. I will maybe just translate the text. We used to eat together once per week from 1985 to 2001. I didn't see him from 2001 to 2004, and he died in 2004. And this work is in 2005. So that's actually a couple of months later I start to do this work.
So already we're seeing this pairing of kind of almost diaristic phrases paired with these images. And so this would be a drawing that you did from one of the images in the family album that you received?
So this, it's from a memory.
Okay.
Because, yeah, I think it's a bit dumb of me, but I think we don't have image from the family albums. We have from archive and memory. That doesn't matter. So this kind of, so it's, since I was eating with him, it's mostly my memory was him at the table eating. He said, "You sister, after what she did to me, I don't want to see her anymore. I don't want any more Jewish stuff." August 2001.
So it's these very kind of provocative and enigmatic pairings that I think start to get at how memory and drawing functions in your work. They're very evocative, they're a little bit blurred, and they're these moments of almost kind of trauma, these like traumatic moments, these shocking memories in your life that you've attached to these small vignettes of images.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea was to, through this series of drawing, to also recreate a fragmented narrative of this old traumatic family experience, but also to be able to edit and to have a certain control of the narrative and to discover, to investigate a bit the gray zone of he looks like a very bad person, but still your grandfather, and you grew up with him, and for 20 years 25 years even, I had no, we didn't know. It's very strange.
So can you talk a little bit about how drawing became really central to your practice? And I'd be curious to hear from you what drawing kind of allows to happen in a series like this.
Yeah, with this type of work at this time until maybe 2009, I was really working in this kind of configuration. So set of drawings, small drawings, fragmented narrative with text and image. And I was interested that suddenly with drawing you can almost do a kind of documentary, or there is also something very filmic, a bit like sophisticated, when you do the movie for the drawing for the movie.
Like an animation?
Yeah, the storyboard, a kind of, exciting storyboard in a way. Because at this time, as I was also doing some videos that I never show anymore since 2004, because I was very interested in editing, in collecting material, and the process of editing was very important. And then I realized that with the medium of drawings, actually I could really do the same kind of work. So I focused then on drawings. And what I enjoy also with drawings is that it's a very free medium. You can do it everywhere. You don't need any kind of resource. It's extremely direct. If you travel and people doesn't understand what you say, you will probably draw something. So it's also a way of communication. And this makes it very rich. And the other thing in drawing that I was very interested from the very beginning is that it's a medium that you can follow the process of making it, maybe even more than painting, because painting you can recover a big part. With drawing, it's very difficult to really get over it. So basically, the result that you see as an image, if you, the one who is doing it, you see it as a duration, as a movie. So we will talk about that later, but now we have an image. But for me, it's also surprising to have an image. And when Kelly was saying earlier that we're still in a way processing it, I realized that very often it's not because I'm doing a work that I really understand it. So it's always come a bit later, gradually.
Let's go through a few other ones.
Yeah, so I will, for the text, he say, your father is a loser. He orders some wine and say, that's life. Yeah, it's a bit of a, I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate. My both grandparents were very this patriarch and quite violent people. So I did both to work about both of them, and in a way there is a lot of...
And in some ways it sets up, I think, your ongoing interest in kind of structures of power, like how power is image, structured, replicated, you know, what girds it and what troubles it. And I think that's apparent in this early work where it's really talking about patriarchal power and what does that look like and how does it manifest.
Yeah, I think it's an experience I had in my family, and I was very interested to think, well, first to try to understand how it works, to also try to protect yourself, and then also to, with this drawing and this kind of constructing narrative, to have a certain control over it, and in a way, 20 years later now, in a way, I have the full control over it because, well, he's dead. I'm the one with the photo albums. I can mediatize this story. So it was unconscious, but there was a kind of need to be empowered with this situation. Here, that's drawing from an archive, so all the drawing on this work, because it's a series of 25 drawings. So all the drawing coming from archive, they're very small and they're always in a merge of the paper. Here it's 3 January 1925, dictatorship open-faced. So it gives the title to this series. It's when Mussolini proclaimed his regime as a dictatorship.
So I want to make sure that we move on. Well, there it is. This next work by yours. And oftentimes a starting point in your work is a particular image. It can be an artwork or an image you see in a book or in the news or even like a tattoo on a stranger's shoulder. And in the case of this one, the image that really provoked this deep study and kind of moment of learning for you was this image here.
Yeah, it was this image. It appears in the Le Parisien. It's a newspaper in France, and at this time it was in 2018, and you had in the news a lot of this kind of imagery with boat full with migrant people rescued, or very often you have image when they're rescued and not when they're dead. And I was shocked by my first lack of empathy towards this image, and I don't know why this image strike me, especially this one, and I was thinking, okay, maybe I could slow down the flux of images, and by redrawing it in a very slow pace, I could maybe try to learn something and understand something. So that was the first image for a very large body of work. And it was a show in a drawing room in London. And the idea was, you see on the right side, on the left side, sorry. No, on the right side for you, sorry. I did like an atlas, so collecting image of people on boat through art history mostly, and because I was thinking, okay, maybe these people on boat, they're not very neutral, and actually doing that, I realized that they're always a very specific type of people on this boat. So they are heroes, or they are mad people, like we will have an image later, but that basically stigmatize people that are on this boat, and their personal individuality is usually totally, or personal identity is totally erased.
Made
by the group.
anonymized, yeah. And so this work, these kind of bringing together, I mean, here I'm seeing like Greek urns, I'm seeing Raft of the Medusa, which we will definitely talk about later, there on the bottom right. So you're starting to build this kind of image bank of all these different representations of boats or migrant people throughout art history, all the different ways that that's been imaged. And were you aware of the art historian Abby Warburg when you were making this series, or is that something that kind of came out of this? Or when did you learn about Abby Warburg, and how did that become important to you?
Maybe 10 years before this work. But I always wanted to do something, or to use some concept of Abby Warburg, because I was very interested in how image, first in this work, how representation can shape a way of thinking, even unconsciously. And with Abby Warburg, how image could be reactivated, go from one context, reappearing in different time of history. And that was something very exciting for me.
So I'll pause briefly and talk a little bit about who Abby Warburg was. He was an art historian who was working at the turn of the 20th century. And he had this idea of telling an art history purely through images. And so finding these similar kind of compositions, these similar postures, and just putting them all together. And these are actually boards that have been recreated from some of his studies. So you can see here one that's thinking about like the female figure, the female nude, the female posture, and really interested in not so much what each one of these images means, but how meaning is built through how these images move throughout different geographies and different times, and this kind of accumulation of resonances that people feel through them. So like their representations throughout time are manifest in contemporary forms and kind of bring all of that history and heritage with them, whether unbeknownst to all of us. And for you, it sounds like it was really interesting, this idea of how these images kind of operate on the unconscious level. For example, this idea of kind of anonymous people on boats are continuously represented in this way that's ominous, or that's something kind of not worthy of empathy.
Yeah, that was the very interesting part for me. And also what I find very interesting with Abby Warburg is that, of course, you don't have a linear art history anymore. So you can open it to a very different way of thinking, where object, let's say, or images are much more in parallels, and that the relationship they have between them is as important as themselves. And we saw the previous work, and it works a bit like this. Each drawing in itself lose a lot of context, a lot of strength if they're not related with the other element of the series. So that was, for me, this discovering of Abby Warburg was mind-blowing.
So kind of creating these new constellations, these new relationships between them.
Yeah, absolutely. And to have a vision that is much more like a rhizome, that like a kind of linear hierarchy.
Right, like a
net, a system of net, let's say, or network.
Yeah. I know one of my favorite Warburg quotes was always, it's not so much what the expression means, but it's how does the image move.
Yeah.
So it's like thinking about its replication. It's thinking about how, like a rhizome or like a virus or something, it can just kind of seep into these ways of image making.
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. And I think if we have in mind social media today, it's extremely exciting how image, very old one, very even forgotten one, suddenly reappears in different contexts that can be ironical meme in certain communities or in fashion or in whatever.
So I'm actually just really interested, how do you build your image resource bank? I mean, do you just like, are you constantly saving images? Are you cutting things out? Are you taking pictures? And then do you just look through everything when you are in the studio? Or I guess I'm just curious for someone that is really understanding the world through images and slowing them down in drawing. What does all of that kind of look like in the actual day-to-day?
I collect images all the time. So when I go through social media, I do a lot of screenshots. If I go to a museum, I will...
Not here.
Not here, but if I can't, I buy the catalog and I can screenshot the catalog. But I collect a lot of images continuously, and there is a lot of images that I'm very excited to work with. But I will wait till I find the right context and that I can really use the full, how can I say, potentiality of the image, because I like image when you give them enough space so they can unfold in different, what could I say, in different field or in different existential mode, like politically, psychologically, artistically, whatever. So this first image that we saw, the newspaper image, I cut it in 4, and then my idea was to analyze this image by doing association. So here it's the part where you see the people. So then I went through, I don't remember how I choose them now, but I went through my image and I find a different group of people that I was thinking could be also stigmatized and that were representing in this kind of group identity. So I put them next to the image.
So putting, in some ways, putting these images in motion in a way that kind of starts to disrupt these stereotypes, or also puts this crisis into a longer lens of history.
Yeah. So this image is from a monastery, the monastery of Voronet in Romania. And I was very touched by this image because I think there is something so striking in this representation of all these saints, that there's so many that you, at the end it looks like a hill, or it looks like, I don't know, an accumulation of saints. And that was an image from the movie Metropolis by Fritz Lang, and it's the scene of the workers going to the mine. And I was thinking that's also a group of people, and this image has been quoted a lot in pop culture as well. So I took very different image coming from extremely different contexts to kind of map this group identity. Yeah.
And so we'll go on to the last of your past works that we're going to talk about this evening. And where do I have it? So this one I also find extremely fascinating, and I'll go ahead and put an image of it up here. So as you can see, Marc is someone that's quite well practiced in the medium of the wall drawing. I think you counted for us somewhere between 20 and 30 wall drawings that you've done. So with this project, I would actually just first like to start by asking you what intrigues you about wall drawings, or what keeps you interested in them, and what brought you to them to begin with?
Well, I think what is great is that you have a physical experience, because usually they're quite a large image, and you, as the viewer, you really confront with an image that is that your body can respond. And the other thing that I like is how it's played with architecture, and also that it will be usually destroyed. And I think the fact that this work will, well, they're constantly disappearing. I love this idea that people can see it during the exhibition, and then it's a memory, and then it can never be done again. It can be redone, but it will be different in different architecture, in different rooms, So it's all the time a different project in a way.
And can you share a little bit about the ideas and thought behind this project?
Yeah, so here it was about the AIDS crisis. And what I did is that I took these comic books, and it was one of the first in '92 when AIDS was mentioned. So that's the back that you see, the wall drawing, and on top of it you have 6 panels. And the 6th panel, I redraw how AIDS was mediatized on French TV. So it was for me memory, because I remember when I was between 14 to 20, how it was mediatized. But then I went back to Paris in the Bibliothèque Nationale. They have the Institute for the Audiovisual, so they have all the archive of TV. And I could re-find all the clip and re-see it and kind of experience this memory I had. And then I did a kind of editing, and I had text as well. That was my own experience. But I think what was interesting for me at this time, and also with this work, is to remember and experience that intimacy is always political. And sometimes people think that they're not concerned by politics, or that it's very above them, or that they can just lead their life, more or less the way they want. But it's actually always defining yourself. And it's, I think it's good to be very aware of that.
And I remember you shared with me about this work in particular, that to be a young person and watch and see these representations of queer people on television was something that was quite rare, and that in fact one of the first larger displays that you had, or access that you had to images of queer people in contemporary life, were when they were dying of AIDS.
Yeah, it was always. So basically on French TV you would never see a queer person, and if it was the case, it will be a famous person suddenly dying from AIDS. So they will have to be out, and usually a week or a couple of weeks or 1 month later, there will be the same face coming on the TV to say that this person was dead. So it was a kind of constant revelation and annihilation at the same time. And I was thinking this idea of representation is so important for communities to have an idea of themselves. It's very difficult to build an identity if you never have, if there is no public image of yourself.
I mean, I like what you were saying about the intimacy being political. And another thing that I really love about your work is that oftentimes this kind of affection, this kind of tenderness, or even desire or lust is it's quite present. I think it's a very real through line in your work. And so I would really be curious to ask you about the importance of that and how that comes out as something in your practice.
Yeah, I think that I don't know, the face I have sometimes in optimism come usually from desire and from the fact that what is the situation when people are excited to meet other people with the less prejudice as possible? And it's very often in parties, in bars, in situations like this. And I think this is always very exciting.
So there's always there's a utopianism potentially sometimes to the human encounter, but there's also kind of hazard to it as well. So it's like this constant balance that I think is often in your work too, this kind of vulnerability, but also the possibility of joy, the possibility of something new and something different in these human encounters.
Yeah, I think that the new usually come from a meeting. And I really believe in collective work. Yeah, and also in my practice, of course, drawing is a very solitary activity, but to conceptualize, to have ideas, to develop projects, I think it's very important to pick up different brain and I see it always as a project, collective process.
Well, with that, I would love to turn our attention to the drawing on the wall tonight. So resilience, drawing the line, I think maybe after looking at some of the images we've shared tonight, you are seeing some resonances. You're seeing this party in the middle. You are seeing a swirl of images that link past and present, and another fragmented narrative that's tracing a new iconography. And the one we're seeing here is an iconography of both domination but also resistance. So again, that kind of visiting of those structures of power again. And here we have images layered of man-made disaster, patriarchal violence, and we also have images very evocative of present-day Houston as well. And the political battles here that are very present over climate justice, humane migration policy, and the rights of marginalized communities. So this work surfaces a lot of themes that we've talked about tonight. So if I could start by asking you for what was the initial spark of an idea that you had for this project, kind of your research question, so to speak?
Well, sorry. Usually I'm very excited to do something specific for the place where the work will be shown. So for here, it was very important for me that there is a strong link with Houston. And in my first visit with you, I think this water was really an interesting topic that really ran in the history of Houston from the beginning. And I was thinking that in this kind of catastrophe moment, it push people to behave in certain way, best or worst, but it's kind of yeah. I don't know how to say that.
Well, I think it's present in here. I think you see these different, in these little vignettes, you see these different ways of people kind of providing aid or
exactly.
helping each other. And you see kind of elements of that dotted through in both the historical images that you've selected, but also in the kind of more contemporary images that you've brought together as well.
Yeah, that was the idea. So to have scene of resilience, of support, of sharing, of how we could work together. And with this iconography from art history, it was also to select image that in the image itself, the model was depicted with dignity, with sensibility, with...
So we have a few examples here of works that are present here. And in particular, I mean, this is one that we've seen in your work before tonight. I am also just curious, what is it that brings you back to this work in particular, or back to certain art historical images in general?
I think this work condenses a lot of ideas visually that I'm very interested in. And it could be also the metaphor of many different, it could be a political metaphor, it could be a social metaphor, a psychological metaphor. It could be also with this person of color that is on the top of the pyramid, an idea of hope and resistance. So I think this picture is extremely rich, and I think that's why I'm coming back to it, maybe in an obsessive way.
And so here, this one, it's on the left side of the drawing here, and so you can see the top of the pyramid of this work's titled The Raft of the Medusa, and you can see that figure forming the top of the pyramid on top of a kind of makeshift flat raft of someone that's been displaced due to some kind of flooding event. So this kind of imbrication of all of these catastrophes, these waterborne events, bringing this kind of swirl of people together. And again, kind of placing a longer lens of history on ideas of kind of catastrophe at sea or like water catastrophe.
Yeah, I think that we have a very short-term memory, and we always think that because something happened to us, it's special. But actually, it's happened to millions of people through history. And we just usually repeat something that we're vaguely conscious of. And we, in this kind of situation, maybe your possibility of acting is not that huge, and maybe we could try to be a bit more conscious from these different catastrophe in the past.
Let's see what else we have in here. This is another work that you've quoted here. We have the snake on the right side of the drawing.
Yeah, we have the snake because I wanted to have basically also something threatening. You have a shark in the other side. I wanted to have a bit too mythical monster. And I was thinking the nice thing with snake, for the one who has this image in the mind, it's really something that make all the people struggling and probably will kill them. But in the drawing, it's also a line that connects different parts of the drawings. And it's a snake, but it's also a connection.
Mm-hmm. And then we have this figure here is kind of center right, I would say. You can see the figure of this prince, and then you can see the hand of this other figure coming in, more sketch-like. And can you talk a little bit about where you sourced this image from?
Yeah, I was interested in this kind of imagery because it was image that was done against slavery. And it was also to show that this, so in this case, this prince will be a partner, but for this we need to educate. So there is always something about emancipation, but also something very paternalistic. Mm-hmm. So this image are always still very difficult to handle with a very mixed message. Mm-hmm. And I was, in this one, what I was interested is that the prince looks also very, I don't know, there is something very quiet about him, and he looks very intelligent, but of course the white person is above him and show him something. But I think it's a complex image. And
I think it's representative of a lot of some of the images you've chosen in here, is that they are complicated images to parse, because in this case this was an image that was made for the remit of Karl Bernhard Wadstrom. It was someone that made this image for himself to feel like a good charitable person. Yeah. So it does have this very paternalistic aspect to it, but it's also a real portrait of a real enslaved person, and a person that was enslaved coming from royalty. Yeah. And so it's these images that have this very complex relationship with domination and resistance, and sometimes kind of flicker really complexly between these two realms.
Yeah, I think that but we experience that in our daily life, that we could think that we do something good and not actually doing it. It's a very insensitive thing to do. So, yeah, it's complicated. But, yeah. And this story is so traumatic that it's also very difficult to touch it.
Mm-hmm. And this was an image that you found in this text, correct?
Yeah.
So some of you may be familiar with a project that was started by Dominique de Menil called The Image of the Black in Western Art, and it's proliferated into a series of, I think, over 20 volumes of different representations of people of color in art history. And so this is just a selection of these, and so you really mined this material to find find some of these images and place them into this new context that we're seeing here?
Yeah, I was very interested in this project. Also, as I say about the work on about date, because I think representation is so important, and I think that they start this project I think it's in the 70s or so.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, for me, it's a very important project, and I wanted to quote it for sure. So that was an important source.
And so I'll just keep this slide up as we continue to look at this drawing here. And so we began this talk by talking about these kind of diary-like entries in here. And so we also see them manifested here, these kind of panels that lay on top of the drawing, almost as though they were kind of a graphic novel. And here there are also snapshots of memories, these very evocative, provocative pairings of text and image. And can you speak to those and the through line of them?
Yeah, it was interesting to have also in this work my own experience and how I have the feeling that I, in a way, experience power system, and also how to perform when suddenly you realize that you're a different color, that you're white, and that it works differently, let's say. And I was interested to try to find a memory that kind of captured this very vague feeling.
Right.
And so the drawing with the date is memory, and the drawing without the date, it's more like statement about Western culture or Western way of thinking.
And so much like the work that we started with, there are kind of these memories or moments where you were taught, sometimes unconsciously, how to perform your gender, how to perform masculinity, how to perform your race. And it's just really kind of striking to see them kind of come back in this way, in this wall drawing.
Yeah, I think it's always complicated when it's a bit like a fish, you know, we always think the fish feel the temperature of the water. And I think it's good sometimes to try to feel the temperature and to try to see, okay, I think like that, that's my default setting in a way, and why is it? Why I'm like this and not like that? Why I'm define myself like this and not like that? And I think that this kind of memory for me were important to try to find a bit, okay, this unconscious way of thinking.
And the title of this drawing is Resilience, Drawing the Line. And the center form of this is this dance party. It's this encounter. So if we could end before we turn it over to a few questions. We're doing questions, right? The significance of this central scene to you.
Yeah, I was thinking, I speak before about how intimacy was political. And I remember when I was a teenager and young, 20, 15, etc. Party was suddenly this moment of freedom and of discovering yourself, and that, usually it went okay, you know, whatever you were doing, and I think that there is something very exhilarating and exciting, and I think it's a frame that allows people to sometimes experience the best of them. And that's why I was thinking, if I think of resilience, this is for me the metaphor of it.
Yeah. And it's something I've happily seen evidence itself. It's surfaced itself in your work of late, that you're really this idea about radical resilience, and what are strategies for that? Yeah,
I think that it's still, it looks like a kitsch idea, but it's more complicated, and it's worth to fight for it, I think. And this drawing the line part was like, well, with this heritage, with this traumatic history that all of us have to face, where you what do you accept? What is your, where you stand? Where is your standing point?
Thank you, Marc.
Thank you.
So I may have missed, but we are doing questions. Thank you, Tony. So Tony is going to come around with a microphone. If anyone has any questions or even just observations they would like to share about the drawing, we really welcome that.
Just raise your hand and I'll come around. Okay.
I can follow it.
Oh,
When this is over, what will happen to it? Will it be destroyed?
Yeah. Or destroyed, paint over, destroyed, very dramatic.
You have 2 more versions, though, first, before it gets destroyed. So, okay. All right. And I think we have a question over here. Yeah.
It looks like such a beautiful, complete work. Can you talk about how you'll come back and change it? And what is the impetus to change it? Because to me, it looks very realized and complete.
Yeah, it is, and it was also a bit my stress at the beginning when I finished it to think, oh gosh, now I have to change it. And I was kind of happy with the solution I find here, so I was like, But I think that the narrative has to evolve, and so probably there will be some comment on the text, or maybe some erasure, or maybe some motif will have to change to make this narrative evolve. So in a way now I start to be less, I start to be very excited about the change and not about, oh, I finished this and it looks so nice and I want to keep it. I think it's good to have very little respect for your own work, because otherwise it's very complicated to go on. And to think, well, the next step is always the exciting step.
Thank you, Marc. Okay, could you talk briefly about how you deployed color?
Yeah, the color, so for me this is extremely colorful already, because as you saw, my work is mostly black and white. But I like color to give certain intensity to some part, and also to guide a bit the look of the viewer in certain part, and that maybe to give some entrance. The drawing for me, it's always a kind of meeting point between the viewer and me, and so I try to give some image and text or stuff that the viewer will know already. So that's why usually every project is specifically done for the context of the place, because I like to use the work as a connection. And the idea is also that, for example, for the memory, to give something that is open enough that everybody maybe, not everybody, but a lot of us maybe played with Lego or knows Lego or had experience with Lego or have an experience. I don't know, it's always to find very simple stuff, simple object that can, in a way, attract the viewer. And then the viewer can fill the space with his own experience.
Yeah, so there's this wonderful matchup here between kind of very, very finished parts of the drawing. I mean, the whole thing is realized, but there's elements of it that are a bit more sketchy, that kind of allow this porosity and allow this kind of narrative to be made in the mind of the viewer, where which elements come together in which ways. So there's this freshness to it.
Yeah, it has to stay fresh, because otherwise I think it's dead. Yeah.
On that note, no. Does anyone have another question? It looks like everyone's ready for a drink. Well, thank you again, Marc.